Welcome to the Servant Leadership Library podcast, where we explore what it truly means to lead with purpose, humility, and impact. I'm your host, Nicholas Paulukow, CEO of One-to-One Incorporated, a managed IT and security firm dedicated to helping organizations grow through the power of people, process, and technology. Each episode, we sit down with leaders who embody the servant leadership mindset, leaders who know that when you put people first, the results follow. Today, I'm honored to welcome a true servant leader whose legacy speaks for himself, Larry Richardson, President and CEO of the YMCA of the Roses. For the last 31 years, Larry has led with heart, vision, and deep commitment to community. In addition to his role at the Y, he also serves as president of the Y's Community Development Corporation, the YMCA's community development arm, which continues to make a lasting impact on the lives of so many. As Larry prepares for a well-earned retirement in July, we're taking a moment to reflect on his incredible journey, what he's learned, what he's built, and the leadership principles that have guided him through the decades of service. From navigating challenges to creating transformative opportunities for youth, families, and communities, Larry's story is one of resilience, purpose, and unwavering dedication. Whether you're a nonprofit leader, a business owner, or someone striving to lead with intention, this conversation is full of insight and inspiration. So we'll dive in now. So Larry, thank you for joining us. How are you doing today?
Doing great, thank you. It's finally sunny out, so I'm doing wonderful.
All right, you're absolutely right. Could you kind of give the audience a little bit what drew you to kind of the mission of the YMCA so many years ago?
Yeah, sure. And thanks again for having me today. It's I don't want to sound trite, but as a person of faith, I think probably I was called to the mission more than I was driven to the mission. And I was just very fortunate that it aligned with my own worldview, which is, my own biblical worldview, and how I can be used in certain ways, whether it's in benefit of a community or providing product or services or whatever it may be. So just very fortunate. I never set out to be a YMCA CEO for 38 years. That was not my intention. It was never on my radar. But it's funny how God works. And so it was very, I think I was called to the work. And again, it was just a great marriage. It was a great I was, just leaned into that plan. And, I look back now and just say, wow, it seemed like it was long ago. I mean, I look at pictures when I first started at the Y, I looked like a child, but it went by fast. But I think I was called to this, and now, I mean, we'll probably talk about it. I don't think I'm being called. I'm being called away from it. I think I'm being called to something else. So, still trying to figure that out. But I would say I was called to this work, and very fortunate and blessed to have done so.
God works in funny ways, doesn't he? Right?
Amen.
We
Yes.
look to go to one path and he pulls us into another. So what a blessing that he has brought your talents and treasures to the community. And we really appreciate that.
Yes.
Yeah. What was kind of that pull? We talk a lot about this of faith a lot on the podcast too. And like what was like the spark? Like what was the spark that kind of guided you to that? Because many times maybe we feel called to something, but you took action.
Yeah, I think that it's kind of an odd situation. I was a professor in the state university system and coaching college football, and we had a change in head coaches, and I coached there for one more year, and then I took a head high school job in another community. And when I took that head high school job, while I was finishing my PhD, that community, I was speaking to various groups, and I was going to be a head high school coach there, and they had left the YMCA director in that town to go, and they asked if I would be interested in being the YMCA director. Well, I had grown up in the Y as a kid, grew up in Williamsport, Pennsylvania. I was in the boys club at the time, and as a young child, I used to go there and play pool. And I was from a single parent home and played pool and swam and played basketball and bowled. They had bowling alleys there. I did everything at the YMCA.
Love it.
I said, this would be awesome. It'd be like going back to my childhood, just hanging out, lifting weights, working out, playing basketball. And of course, I got there the first day and I was in charge of making payroll and paying bills, and I had no idea what I was doing. So some would say 38 years later, I still don't have any idea what I was doing. So I got into the work, and I just started to enjoy the work.
Wow.
Again, it was nothing I ever set my sights on. And
Right.
slowly over those first 4 years while I was the head high school coach, I was realizing, my wife and I, and through a lot of prayer, should we stay in this as a potential vocation and career and see where this
Right.
goes? Or again, I was a PhD candidate at Penn State, finishing my PhD, and should I, go that pathway? So over that 4 years, it was kind of a slow burn in terms of,
Wow.
where we were being called to do. And then so I couldn't do both things any longer. I couldn't coach the high school team and be a YMCA director,
Right.
and be dedicated to both pathways, if you will. So we decided to throw our, just to say, okay, we're going to lean into this YMCA profession. And I was there at that YMCA 2 more years. So I was there 88 to 94. And then the National Y, the York YMCA at the time was a troubled Y. And we had turned that YMCA around in that community where I was. And so I became this turnaround person. I enjoyed the challenge. And again, I didn't have any clue what I was doing, and that was probably best. So I know background in it.
Right.
I just kind of did what I felt was best through research and wise counsel from others that were leaning into me. And then came here in 1994, and then we've had other opportunities over these past 31 years to move on to other jobs, bigger Ys, bigger cities, bigger budgets, bigger problems. But for one way or another, in the Lord's plan, we've always just stayed here and been here. And then in 2001, we merged. We acquired the Lancaster Family YMCA and renamed ourselves YMCA The Roses. And it's just been a wonderful experience for me. And then over the years, of course, a lot of times for me, anyways, I got to look back and to see what the plan was versus, and I know the rear view, the analogy of the rear view mirror is a lot smaller than the front windshield, but when you look back, you say, oh, now I can see what was going on there. I have that wisdom. And I think the older I get, and there is truth in that, right? Biblical truth in that, and especially in Psalms and Proverbs about, the wise and the old, and the older you get, the more wise you get, just from experiences. So, I think that was probably the generation of me leading into that mission. It was just kind of a slow burn in the beginning. It was obvious to stay in the career or lean into that career pathway. And then we just been blessed to be in it for the last 31 years here, in York and York, and now York and Lancaster both.
Wow. What an amazing story. I think it's amazing to hear kind of that passion that comes out kind of from where your journey is. That's pretty amazing. You're bringing memories back, right? Because as a young boy, I grew up in the church, right? And we had we had a bowling alley under the church, and we had pool tables and everything. And so then we did that, and then you went to the Y, right? So you got your swimming lessons, and you did all your activities. And so I always say, like, well, man, it really feels like that's changed, right? Why are we all so away from that? And so then I feel pretty young still, but
looks like
then my kids are like, well, you're sounding old there, Dad. Times are changing, and they just seemed a lot simpler back then.
they were, and hopefully, Lord willing, we'll get back to some of that. But the Y's been around in York and Lancaster for 170 years. So. But it's been a long time.
What a blessing. I love it. I appreciate you sharing kind of the faith component there too. I think that really adds a lot to who we all become and who we are, and kind of gives a really guiding light. It shows kind of, that we offer that up and we give that guidance to be guided. I think a lot of the times letting go is the hard part. And it sounds like you've really practiced that quite well.
Hopefully.
Well, thank you for that. As you served kind of as the president and CEO of the Y, for so long, talk about like the measure from like being a coach to now having to be kind of like a servant leader. I'm sure it was quite different, right? Like, I mean, now you're serving the constituents that are there, but also then have to fiscally manage that. Could you kind of explain to us a little bit how you work through that journey?
Yeah, I guess it's interesting because I even have something on my wall here where when I first made that change, from the coaching to the CEO work, I always, probably in a egotistical way, enjoyed the label coach. I was Coach Richardson, coach. And when I came into the Y and the CEO work, I was no longer a coach. And I would share that with some of my staff. And then, so they started calling me coach in the
Oh,
workplace and gave me like a nice little certificate that says coach on it. And they all signed it.
oh,
And so I really look at it as I'm kind of like the head coach. I'm like the head coach. I have assistant coaches in my senior team. I have players, if you will, that are we're preparing for an event. In this case, provide programs and services and to work out our mission in the local community. There's background work we have to do. There's scouting we have to work. What's the community needs? I really haven't changed, so I think there's a lot of analogies there. I have certain positions of people that have certain skills and talents, and we're all preparing. The difference is, instead of preparing for in college a game on Saturday or in high school a game on a Friday night, every day is a game, every day, every minute, every hour. Because in our we have, we're 365, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, because we have a homeless men's shelter here in the York branch, which is 120 men live here. We have 100 apartments in our community development for affordable housing for families. And now in Lancaster, we have a low barrier homelessness shelter that we operate every night from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. So we're never shut down. We don't ever shut down. Even Christmas and Easter, we still have the housing component. So every day we have to be, we got to be on top of our game. Every day is game day, and that's the difference, I think, between the coaching piece and the CEO piece. Is every day is game day. But I really do approach it as the same way, and try to give liberty or give freedom, if you will, to my team and staff while I'm managing, coaching, counseling, mentoring them. They are doing the same to their group and providing them constructive feedback, trying to develop them. I'm really a 2 Timothy 2:2 guy, teach others that can teach others. So we try to build leadership within our team. And we have over 500 employees now, over 60,000 people we serve on an annual basis. And that's a lot of people and a lot of community needs. Excuse me, I'm going to sneeze.
No worries. What a blessing that is, though. What an amazing blessing to be in the community, but to continue to expand the services. Many nonprofits have come, within hard times, but you continue to push that mission of kind of supporting that community. That's amazing. It's an amazing story.
Yeah. Sorry about the sneeze there. Yeah.
Oh, no worries. No worries at all. If you kind of take, you mentioned earlier that there's been kind of a lot of change, right? And so what have been the biggest shifts that you've seen or witnessed, and how'd you have to navigate that as a leader over the years?
It's interesting because, I've been asked that question a lot recently since I've announced my retirement, and conversations similar to this or just casual conversations. I think the first thing is that we all have to recognize that all leadership is temporary. That it all eventually times out for everybody. It doesn't matter who you are. And so I think I came to that realization sometime, I would say early in my career, knowing that I was, I was charged with being a good steward of the organization's assets and its mission. And that period of time was going to end at some point in time. So, when it did end, what did I want that to look like if I was going to look back? So I would reflect on that at different times. And that allowed me to keep things in perspective. I think there's a lot of things that are certainly different in just in the YMCA field, in the YMCA world now than there was, say, when they're founded in the mid 1800s versus even 10 years ago or 5 years ago. My span of time since 1988 till now, there's been a lot of different things that have happened regarding economy, regarding culture, different presidents, different places, different times, pandemic. I remember in COVID, one of the things we reflected back when you talk about what has changed, and really nothing. So I had a minor in history in college. And so I said to my staff in COVID, I said, hey, listen, we got by a pandemic before. And they're all going, what do you mean? What are you talking about? I said, 1918. 1918, it was a pandemic, and the YMCA was prominent. And the YMCA got through the pandemic in 1918. We'll go through in Spanish flu. We'll go through this one too. It was going to look different, but we'll get through it. So, but I think some things have changed culturally. Certainly, there's changes in terms of services we're providing. Way more than half of our workplace now are females. We're heavily into the child care and family programming, which tends to be female dominated in terms of folks that are in that career. Well, that's not a bad thing. That's a good thing. But
Right.
Way back when the YMCA was founded, even when I started, it was predominantly men in leadership positions. So that's been changing a lot, and it also changes the mix of people who were serving. A lot of YMCA's in the country used to have, at one time, YMCA's were the number one provider of, it was the largest hotel in the world back when YMCA had their residences. And why a lot of YMCA's got out of that work, where we're fortunate we stayed into it and stayed into that work. And now YMCA's are trying to get back into housing because there's such a strong need in, like, especially cities like a Lancaster, like a York, like a Reading, a Harrisburg, smaller cities. Homelessness is a big deal in a lot of our communities, and there's not enough housing, affordable housing. So these single room occupancy housing or shelters and things like that are now being demanded in communities, and there's not expertise and credentialing behind that for organizations to run those. And so, although there's a lot of fine organizations in Lancaster and in York, we're just putting our shoulder to the wheel with those other organizations. So programmatically, they've changed. And I think that even the YMCA, big change in the YMCA is we're still a Christian-based organization, but we're very ecumenical now as how we administer that mission, versus way back in its founding and probably up until probably after World War II, it was very evangelical. So it's way different in terms of how it's administered. And sadly to say, you could go to some communities and not even know it's a Christian-based organization, even though that YMCA has to sign off on a national mission statement about it being a Christ-centered organization and Christian-based. You would have no indication that they are. That is where their leanings are, even though they're signing a national charter signature to be chartered. So again, we don't pretend to do it well here. We lean into our Christian mission. We have Christian Emphasis Committee, partnership with churches, chaplaincy services, Bible studies, Good Friday breakfast we run in Lancaster with over a couple hundred people that come. Again, none of that makes us perfect, but I think a lot of that has changed, and then how people view that certainly has been changed in culture. We were the founders of swim lessons, for instance, but now a lot of communities are providing community-based swim lessons. So, really, if you take a look at the YMCA, it's pretty impressive that it's been able to be dynamic enough to pivot and also maintain, for the most part, its centralized mission, and yet still serve the community based on those community needs, what we have the capacity to deliver on in each of our communities. So I think those are some of the things I'm probably most looking back on that, I'd say these are some of the things that have changed. Hopefully there's some foundational components of our mission that have not changed.
Well, I think it's really neat, though, to hear kind of the mission works, that it continues on, right? But it's kind of with the Christianity aspect of things, what I think is pretty neat. It's kind of set up similar to kind of the church format in the way that I can go to any YMCA and I understand the culture and how it's set up. And although the building might be different, I mean, it's widely adopted as kind of like a universal place, right? And so I think that's kind of really neat, kind of talking about more of like a universal church, which is pretty neat on how you provide that mission. So that's neat. Yeah, the passion really comes through. I love it. And I'm sure you have a ton of stories. But do you have like one story that illustrates what you really think the impact of the Y has from like a leadership standpoint? Because it's using the mentality of being a coach and then bringing, the faith into it. Like, do you have a great story that kind of teaches your ability to kind of lean in and build those leaders up, especially with the changes that you noted?
Yeah, I don't know if I can think of one story, but I will probably. It's probably because it's more recent. And the older I get, I forget about so many of the other things. But I think that we've here, at least on our senior team, that we have really, and this even happened in COVID. So in COVID, Lancaster Y was closed, and New York Y got opened in June, and Lancaster was still closed, and they called us in to provide some consulting services.
Okay.
So we got there like September 1st of 2000, and Lancaster Y still wasn't open, and New York opened June 14th. Wow. And it was are they going to get open or not? So September 1st, my HR director and I went to Lancaster, and we started hiring back staff from Lancaster, and we got opened in Lancaster September 14th within 2 weeks.
Okay.
And I think the key thing there was that the Lancaster folks did prior to us coming there, was that they had selected and they had a group of staff people that could identify with the YMCA mission. We hear, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but they kind of drank the juice of the YMCA mission, and they were caught up in it. And so when we started calling people back, they came back very readily, and we were able to. I bet we hired 100 people in 9 days and opened that YM within 2 weeks. And a lot, if you go back there to Lancaster today, or even in York, what we pride ourselves is in longevity, in a good way. So not in a bad way, in a stale way.
Right.
But I've been here 31 years, but I have several staff that have been here longer than I've been here. Wow, and really? We've had several staff in the last several years retire at 30 years or 30 years plus. Wow. So I think for me, from a leadership standpoint, is going back to how do we develop leaders? How do we build into people with a culture where they believe that they are participating and delivering out that mission, and it's having impact, and it's impactful enough that they want to hang in there and stay and see this as where they come, work, and retire from. And some of them are retired and still working with us on committees and volunteer and do some other things. So I think for me, that willingness of people that have come to us, and again, we saw this in Lancaster, when people were laid off probably in March, and here we are in September, we're a brand new YM coming in, we're saying, just get on the phone, hey, would you be willing to come back? We're going to try to open up in a week. And they came back like that. Wow. So, and those people are still there. Those leaders in Lancaster, most of them are still there. And so I think it was very impressive, and it's how you recruit and then retain and build culture that the people want to stay with you. And then also provide them, not everyone aspires to be a CEO, nor should they be a CEO. Right. Everyone has their job. It takes the whole body, if you will, to work out that mission. But everybody needs to feel that they're leaning into that, and they're playing an important role. So that goes for the high school lifeguard that's here just on the weekends, and it also speaks into the custodians, And so I've always tried to be not open-minded, but open door, but also understand who I can't get around to all 500 people, but make sure I stop, and if I don't know somebody, introduce myself, and not because I'm the CEO, look at me, but because I want to thank those people for how much it means to us that they're sweeping our floors and keeping the bathrooms clean and cleaning up the daycare centers, or providing lifeguard services on a 100-degree day at some of our outdoor pools. That all that work is as important, if not more important. They're going to notice if the lifeguard doesn't show up, if the custodian doesn't come in. But if I don't come in for a day, no one's going to really give a rip. So we get, although I'm the highest paid person in the organization, and maybe because of responsibility and so on, at the end of the day, those are the people that are doing the grunt work and really working out the mission. The eyeball, the eye to eye, person to person mission. So I don't know if that's a story, but more of a cultural moray we try to present here. And we actually have a phrase called living our cause. And the whole idea is that we spread that out to everybody. We want to be welcoming and nurturing. We want to deliver services based on faith, hope, and love. And we're going to do that to everybody. We're going to love God. We're going to love others, regardless of what your religious background is. That's who we are. And everybody knows that. Everybody carries around a little card, living our cause. So it's about building into that culture, making sure everyone feels that they are not just a participant, but they're having productive impact into how we're working through that. So
I love it. You reminded me to kind of, I don't want to derail us, but my youngest son, who is just finished his freshman year in college, right? He is a member at the Y in Lancaster.
That's great.
And what I think is really amazing is that the culture seems to go down to the people that also are customers, because when he showed up there, he likes to lift weights. He goes because of the community of the people that are there, meaning there's a gentleman there that lifts, is in his 60s, that created this mentorship for the other guys that were showing up. And it just is amazing. My son does not stop talking about this gentleman every
Yeah.
time, right?
Yeah.
Like he's helped me, he's guided me, and that really is impactful too. Like even seeing the mission alive with just in the community of people that attend, I think is pretty neat.
And that to me is, people have always asked me, what do you identify success? What's success look like in the
Yeah.
YMCA? And we have budgets, and we have annual reports, we have this, we have an endowment, we have, this, we serve this many people. That
Right.
story right there, that is success in the Y, because I believe we are all about 100%, even delivering on that mission is about relationships. It's
Yeah.
about community. And so your son is engaged in a community, and it's really encouraging to see multi-generational, right?
Yeah.
So it's just that's success, and
It's neat. And they teach each other lessons, kind of where you started from the beginning, right?
Sure.
Of how it was met. Like, he teaches them about, he does farming, he's retired,
Yeah.
but teaches kind of the different generations, which it seems to kind of be back to where you started in the beginning of where it started. I think that's it's amazing. Yeah,
And that's what's cool about the Y,
testament
because
to the
it is
work you guys.
multi-generational. We start serving kids at 6 weeks older in our infant care, and we have gentlemen like this. We have a woman here comes to York. She just lives 2 blocks away from the downtown branch here in York. She walks here. She's in her 90s. She walks here every day, and she's in our wellness center lifting weights every day. She is my idol. We just gave her a big recognition and award on our social media just because she's here all the time. And there's some times where she had some balance issues. She would walk with her walker probably about 3 blocks away, put her walker in the wellness center, and then go lift weights. And
oh my goodness.
And I just said, only
awesome.
by the grace of God will go when I'm 92, and I'm still able to get in here and work out. So yeah, it's very, very encouraging.
It brings back a lot of memories as you speak, because as a child, I was one of those that was taught swim lessons, right? And I was there with my mom and dad, and then our kids went through the process, but then sanity came from being able to actually you could go to the Y and actually be a parent and drop the kid off for a little while and get some sanity check. And there was no other place to do that, right? Like there was no.
The only other church is Sunday morning church. Put the kid in the nursery, and you say, "Oh, preacher, you go long. You go as long as you want to go."
I love it. I love it. That's neat. So, you talk about, you're known for kind of putting people first. So, like, what advice would you give other leaders trying to create kind of this people-centered organization? Like, and especially in trying to drive towards like a mission, right? A lot of for-profit companies have mission statements, right? But what kind of advice would you give them to kind of lead towards putting people first, right? You talked about the numbers and the data, and a lot of times that adds stress, which comes out, but you lead a lot with the people. And that's something to learn from.
Yeah. I don't know if it's a character issue, personality issue. I don't know if God has created me or whatever. I don't know. I mean, I've always been able to be, I always like to be around people. And I think in not all cases, but in this case, in this job, at least, I think being present is a critical piece. Being present in the good times, being present in the bad times, being present when you don't need to be present. I don't like to stay in my office much. I work out in all of our YMCAs, mostly here in York, because that's where my main office is.
Okay.
And when I'm out there, I don't wear a sign that says I'm the president and CEO. I'm just one of the members, and I'm just hanging out like everybody else, and I'm talking to people. If I see somebody struggling on a treadmill or with a piece of equipment, weight equipment, I'll go over and provide some advice. And so, hey, I'm the president. This is how you're supposed to do this. It's just an opportunity for me to be present with other people. Some of my closest friends or allies in the Y are our custodial maintenance crews, So, and I spend time. I sit in their offices with them. I go to lunch with them at times, And so I think being present and is a critical component. Being available to people, being upfront. I'm a huge believer in self-awareness, really knowing who I am, what my strengths are, mostly what my weaknesses are, what my successes have been, but mostly what my failures have been, what I've learned. And then that turns into just being authentic. I don't have all the answers, but I'm going to be present. I'm not going to be absent in times of crisis. I'm going to try to lead with empathy and transparency, being as clear and express as much clarity as possible.
Right.
But I think those are some of I think they sound like a bunch of leadership words that John Maxwell put in a book somewhere. And he probably did, because I've read everything he's probably written, but it takes a while to get those things in practice. But I think I do a lot of mentoring of young leaders, particularly in the nonprofit community here in York. And I think I'm being called to that work outside of here when I'm done. And it to me is just really drilling, having conversations with people. And so I've had it internally with myself. Do I really understand? Am I self-aware of who I am as a leader and what I'm being called to do? And how do I do that in an empathetic way that expresses transparency and clarity? So those are some of the things I would say.
It sounds a lot of humility too, right? Like leading with humility is really kind of key. It sounds like that's amazing. And
it's
you
another key word. Absolutely. Yes.
Oh, absolutely. And you talk kind of about passion and kind of your next phase, right? How do you, you've done this for a long time, so you've seen a lot of things. Like how do you identify a good leader? What are key attributes do you think a leader should have?
Well, I've been influenced a lot. I do a lot of reading. I said I have a minor in history. Being here in York and living in York, I spent a lot of time at Gettysburg.
Okay.
And so I do a lot of studying in Civil War. I had I did some work in college even before I knew I was going to live in York, and I think leadership is expressed best during times of crisis. And you can throw all the words around, but I think one of the biggest expressions of leadership is if you look at what happened in any of the Civil War battles, particularly at Gettysburg, when you talk about regimental flag bearers that are usually targeted right away for strategic issues, and then the regimental flag bearer is shot down, and some dude, in a stupid way, you look back when it picks it up, and he starts carrying it up the hill, and knowing that his mortality rate is very, very huge, but he picks it up anyway and leads, right? Because they follow the regimental flag was a piece of pride, but it also was very strategic on the battlefield, because in the Civil War time, because that's where you could tell where you're supposed to go. That's where the flag bearer is going. So I think it's a willingness to lead. And the second part of that is somebody who's willing to endure pain. I really don't believe you can grow as a leader. You only grow as a leader to as much pain you're willing to endure. Because like in my job here, I have other colleagues. I have colleagues in the community that are leading other nonprofits. I have colleagues in my YMCA world that are CEOs and presidents of other YMCAs that are in like-minded situations. But I don't have anybody in the organization that I can really speak to in terms of when we got to make critical decisions that are sometimes very difficult. And they can be painful. And there are things we go through things every day in leadership that are unfair, that people take shots and they don't have all the information. But that's just a product, I think, of leadership. And I think a lot of people get into leadership without understanding it's going to be painful. Right. And so I think you need to understand that you're going to come under criticism, but you still pick up the flag and take it up the hill because that's what you're called to do. And then I think and I didn't mean, I'm glad you brought up the word humility, because I think you do that with humility, because wherever you may arrive at a place where you say, you know what, I messed this up. I screwed this up. This was a mistake that I've made. And you got to own that. You have to own that, and you got to own that with transparency and clarity also, and be able to express that. And I think if you look at what's going on in our world today, or be it local, state, federal, worldwide, the leaders, I think, who are moving forward endure pain, but with humility, own their mistakes and say, listen, I made a mistake here. This is what I'm going to do. This wasn't anything intentional, but and this is what I'm going to do to fix it. And hopefully I've learned from it. You don't want to keep making mistakes more than once, but I think those are some of the critical components that I would say.
Oh, those are wonderful. I think on those, right? I love the word that you use, kind of like pain, right? It's kind of like if there isn't any pain, there isn't any growth. And I'm thinking, man, you probably are reminiscent of that of your coaching days, right? Like, you're enduring that practice and that
Yeah.
pain, but then you grow and you get better and better and better.
Well, yeah, and I
And
think even in our personal life, in our family, my wife and I have been married 43 years, and we look back on it now and say, this is a young married couple, and all the things that we've experienced, heartbreak and headache and health and other
yeah,
things, and those are the times where we grew. Those are
right.
you grow in the valleys, you don't grow in the mountaintops. So
Yeah.
then you have to understand that those trials and tribulations are going to be opportunities for you to grow, and I think leaders need to see that, and but not everybody's willing to endure that. So you have to be
Right.
willing to accept that as part of the gig, if you will. Yeah.
Yeah. You bring a unique perspective to that because it just resonated with me. I know I look like I'm 20, but I'm not. But in July, my marriage will be 25 years.
Good for
So
you.
okay, excited for that. But, it just resonated to me that kind of a grounding part is kind of like faith and family, right? And
Amen.
so my wife, being similar faith, made it easier, but not that easy because when the times are bad, we could have disagreed and everything. But at the end of the day, the one main component we believed in was our faith. We never
Amen.
disagreed with that. And so
Yeah.
you just bring in some emotion up there to be like,
Yeah.
wow, like that commonality and how we all unite. Like, what is that? What is that one thing that we don't disagree with all the time?
Yeah.
Because
It's
disagreement's
foundational.
good. We learn as
Yeah.
long as we're
Yeah.
humble enough to receive it. But
Right. It's
um,
foundational. It's
wow,
foundational and transformative too. So good for you.
yeah.
Congratulations on 25 years.
You as well. I'm motivated now, right? With the 40, what did you say, 47, 45,
43. 43.
43.
I said
Wow.
43.
That's
Yeah. I
amazing.
know. I know. I look like I'm 22. So
I love it. You have energy of a 22-year-old. I love
I
it.
appreciate that. Yeah. I go to bed about 3 hours earlier than I used to, though.
I say that to my wife. I'm an early riser, and I'm like, man, we were at the gala last night, and I'm like, man, it's getting to be my bedtime. It's
I
almost
know.
9:30, right?
Yeah.
And my kids, I have three college kids and one
Uh,
that's off payroll. But I'm like, they're only getting warmed up at 9:30. I'm
oh,
like,
I
I'm
know.
going to bed.
Yeah, we often talk about. My wife was an RN, and she'd get off work at 11 o'clock, and we would go out at
Oh,
11 o'clock. And
jeez.
now it's like I'm on my first bathroom break at 11.
That's so funny. Well, kind of, as you reflect on your career, right? Like, is there one thing that you're most proud of? I'm sure you're proud of a lot of things. But is there one kind of moment that just sticks out that you're the most proud of?
I don't know if it's a moment, but it's an accumulation of opportunities, instances, relationships, decisions.
Okay.
I was really influenced as about 20 some years ago. I was a big Chuck Colson guy. I read a
Okay.
lot of Chuck Colson. One of the things that attracted me to him was just the whole Watergate thing, but then he came to faith and then he
Mm,
went to prison. And while he was in prison, he has this turnaround, like almost like, well, Paul didn't really turn around in prison. He's already turned around. But while he's there, he's writing these books, he's formulating these thoughts.
mm,
He's a brilliant, brilliant man. But he had it was a comment that has always stuck with me, and I've used with a lot of my own staff. And I've run a men's Bible study here at the Y. One of my close friends is retired from here. He and I
okay.
have led a Bible study here for well over 20 years. And we share this with the guys in the Bible study because it's a men's group. Chuck Colson always referred to when he was post Watergate out of prison and serving in prison fellowship
Mm,
ministries, that he always wanted to be sure he was at his post. He
mm,
used that military term of a guard, if you will, or somebody,
mm,
always being at their post, whatever their assignment was, and whatever that was, he was going to be at his post. And I think that I've tried to, if I look back, um, good decisions, bad decisions, successes, failures, positives, negatives, is no matter what, I showed up and
mm,
I stayed in my post. And
mm.
and I think that more than anything else, that's probably what I'm going to miss.
Oh,
And I'm a little bit nervous about that because I'm going to be at a different post, but I'm
mm,
still going to be called to do something else, but it's going to be something different.
right.
So, but I think it's no matter what happened, like I said, the good, the bad, the indifferent, and there's been a lot more good than anything, and it probably, and most especially in relationships. But I'm hoping that people knew that I would always be in my post, I'd be reliable, and I'd
Mm,
be loyal. And I would put mission first. They always know that it was mission first for me. So I think it's accumulation of that, but I think I would sum it up by saying, I want to make sure I'm always at my post.
Hmm. I love that. I love that.
Mhm.
And you kind of tie into that. Like, is there, I can reflect kind of on my career a little bit, but like with your career, is there like one lesson you wish you would have learned earlier?
One lesson I wish I would. Yeah, I'd say I went back to something I said earlier, being self-aware. I just kind of
Ah,
showed up. I'm the leader. This is what we're going to do. I mean, I really didn't understand positional authority versus moral authority.
mm,
And I had the title, and I thought, there's probably some ways that I was leaning into it but I really, moral authority is earned. Um,
mm,
and I probably needed to learn that earlier. And I think I learned it fairly early, but I think when I first started, I'm in charge here, kind of the Al Haig, when Ronald
ah.
Reagan was, General Haig said, I'm in charge here when Reagan was shot. I'm the person in charge and my decision's final. And well, that's still all true. I think that I needed to really build into
Mm,
people with some of the terms that you've used: humility, empathy, clarity,
yeah.
transparency, authenticity, to really establish moral authority. Because people
Mm,
really, at the end of the day, leadership is influencing
right.
people. They follow you as the leader, and they're not going to follow somebody that doesn't have moral authority.
Right. Right.
So I think that's
Hmm.
probably where I would land that. Yeah.
Oh, I like that. I like that. And it's amazing to kind of hear you kind of talk through that just with kind of how you process that is pretty
Mm-hmm.
amazing of kind of the experiences, right? And I think what we all learn from leadership is it's when it switched from I to we, right? I think I
Yes.
was hearing a little bit of that. It's about we and it's about us and how are we going to get there. And it reminds me
100%.
of a book of was a three laws of leadership, right? And the first one is the one you spoke of, right? And as you build to the third level, what you seem to have done in your career is that you're a leader building leaders, right?
Yes.
And that's got to feel good, but that takes a unique person to be able to have that skill and ability. So thank you for having that ability to do that. What a journey, right?
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah. Wow. As you kind of think about like you speak to the next generation, right? But like if you were speaking to the next generation of servant leaders, what words of encouragement or challenge would you leave them with?
Well, some of the things that we've talked about, understand that leadership is painful.
Mm,
You need to grow through the painful process. Being self-aware, I think, is huge, critical, and be your authentic self. I think people
mm,
respect that, and embrace the leadership with a lot of humility, because you're going to
mm,
fail more than you're going to succeed, and you need to be able to own that stuff. So I think it's some of the stuff that we probably already have said. And I do a lot of mentoring. I'm a part of Mentorship York here, and so I don't want to say that these are out of a textbook or they sound trite, but
right.
these are things I'm
Right.
stressing a lot because, and I've been blessed with the opportunities here in coaching some
Mm,
nonprofit CEOs and even in the YMCA world, where I'm often talking about these which I appreciate the questions and the direction you've taken this podcast, because those are some of the things that I'm leaning into on a daily
mm,
basis that I've learned from my experiences. And hopefully, Lord willing, I still have a lot more to learn. So there may be some other things that
right.
come up, but so I would say those would be some of the key things, that some of that we've already put to sum that up in those few words.
True. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And kind of, with the morals and values of the Christianity that's kind of tied to your role, has that ever become a challenge, right? Like, do you ever feel that you're like defending your faith almost or defending Christianity, especially with the change that we all go through? I know me personally, my children, they're like, well, I want to lean into that, but how do I lean into that? Could you
You got.
share some of that? Like
I
you're
lost you
with the
there, but I
Bible.
think I lost you for a second there. Yeah,
Oh yeah, like
but
you're with the Bible
I think I
study
understand.
and other things. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I understand the question. So one of the things happens in leadership is painful, right? People are going to take shots. You're going to be criticized. You're going to have to make very difficult decisions. They're going to be conflicting with other people. They're going to be tough decisions. And then when you're making it from a professed Christian perspective,
Right.
People are gonna use that against you and say, how can you make that decision? And you claim that you're a Christian. This is harming other people. So I get that a lot, and you're a Christian-based organization. How can you let this happen? Or how can you say this? Or how could you have terminated this employee? Or how could you have treated somebody in this way? Or how could and then the other part of it is going back to humility. Says, listen, I'm not perfect. I'm going to make a lot of mistakes on the hour, by the hour. So I'm not. There's no claim here that I'm perfect, just because. But I'm going to lean into that, being a Christian leader, servant leader, if you will, first and foremost. But that doesn't mean that it's going to be perfect. It's not going to look perfect. So that comes back to owning mistakes and asking people, listen, I made a mistake here. I forgive, and ask your forgiveness for that. Then there's other times you say, that's just, there is, it's just a decision that I've made, and I've made it in a way that I think is best for all people. And I've made it in a way that I have to comprehend in terms of what my job is. And that is my number one job in this position is protect the mission. Right. And sometimes that could be harmful to people, regardless of what their critiques are going to be. So I think that becomes, it's just another lightning rod, if you will, for people to take a shot at you. Right. And that's okay, because we were told from a biblical standpoint, we're going to be persecuted at times for our faith, and you got to feel that, okay, I must be doing the right thing then.
Right. Yeah, it sounds like the real life Pharisees, right? Today's Pharisees, right? Practice it when I want to, but not really, right? And so
that's right.
That's really neat. And I guess, I hear you speak about it. My passion comes out to say, wow, now this is an opportunity to lead with faith, right? And lead with compassion, because I can't imagine, the Lord was on this earth and there wasn't one day that he wasn't under some sort of scrutiny. So but I guess that goes along with your, it's going to be hard and it's going to be tough and you got to be present.
Yes,
right.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Wow. I appreciate you sharing that. And, when, is there anything that you'd like to share that maybe their listeners could learn more about the YMCA, and continue, like, how can they support, how can they pour their heart into the mission? I learned a lot today, being in the community. I knew a piece of what I lived as far as the YMCA, but now learning more about the activities that you perform. Would you like to share a little bit about that?
I think the best thing is, two things. Go to our website, rosesymca.org. Take a look at the programs and services. Look at some of the drop downs and the reports that we do, our giving guide, why we are supported in the benevolent community for the charitable work that we do, how that people can get involved. Sometimes you can be very myopic. And I don't know your son, but your son comes in and just say, for an example, he comes in and he lifts weights. He could be very myopic and just say, I just focus on people I lift weights with and just the wellness center, and walk right by kids that are going to the chronic disease prevention program that we have for our cancer survivors, or swim lessons we do for refugees in the Lancaster community. And so it's very broad. And there's a lot of opportunities. Of course, it is the community's YMCA, so there are opportunities there also to get involved, not just financially. Financially, we always appreciate, but also in terms of leaning into the mission and various things that they can be involved in from a volunteer perspective. And so I think it's just learning from there. Our annual report will be out soon. Our annual meeting's coming up June 16th. You can see what were some of the activities. Who are the people we're recognizing from a leadership and a volunteer standpoint on an annual basis? So there's a lot of information there. And there are also some, I think, some drop downs on our website about the history of the YMCA in Lancaster and York. The YMCA started in 1844 in London, England, Boston, Massachusetts in 1851. And of course, Lancaster was 1 year ahead of York, 1854,
really?
and York
no
was
competition or anything.
That's right, and York was 1855. So, but these YMCA has been around a long, long time, and it's interesting to see the history. I just posted something on social media the other day. The Lancaster Y in Columbia, there was a railroad YMCA association of the Lancaster Y, and they had this slide. It looks like 10 stories high in the Susquehanna River. So people that were working for the railroad, coming in the railroad, had recreational activities provided by the Lancaster YMCA through the Railroad Association on the Susquehanna River. So it's a lot of cool things. I just read a book about trench warfare in World War I, And the gentleman writing the book was writing from his grandfather's notes from 1917 and 1918.
Wow.
And one of the prominent groups present in those trenches was the YMCA.
Was it
And so,
really? That's amazing.
Unbelievable. So it's
Yeah,
a lot of history there. Go to our website and get on there, get engaged. There's contact information there if you want to get involved. Join the Y, give to the Y, support the mission. We appreciate all that.
We appreciate you, Larry. Thank you very much. Well, that's a wrap, unfortunately, on another inspiring episode of Servant Leadership Library. And a huge thanks to you, Larry, for joining us today. I know you have a lot going on and sharing not just, your leadership journey, but your heart behind it. I think it really comes out. And, Larry has embodied what it means to lead with purpose, humility and vision, from transforming communities through the YMCA, to building opportunities through the Y Community Development Corporation. His legacy is a testament to the power of servant leadership in action. As Larry reminds us, great leadership is rooted in people. And when you serve first, focus on strengths, stay committed to the results that matter, the impact isn't just measurable, it's meaningful. So if today's conversation inspired you, please subscribe, share this video with fellow leaders, and leave us a review. I'm Nicholas Paulukow, and on behalf of everyone at 1-to-1 and the Servant Leadership Library, thank you for tuning in. And remember, hire the right people, and they'll take care of the process and the tech. And until next time, lead with service, lead with heart, and keep building something greater than yourself. Till next time.